Right, so while the world's literally on fire, and I mean that almost literally, what does the UK government decide is the priority? Potholes. Yes, you heard that correctly, potholes. Because nothing says global leadership quite like obsessing over tarmac while Venezuela's being seized and Iran's in absolute chaos. But don't worry, folks, we've got a shiny new traffic light system to rate council performance on road repairs. Priorities, am I right? Welcome back to Brit Articles, where we dive into the absolutely bonkers world of British politics, and today we're talking about the moment Nick Ferrari absolutely eviscerated Keir Starmer live on air, and honestly, it was glorious. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because British politics is serving up drama faster than a Greggs sausage roll, and you don't want to miss a single bite. So let's set the scene, shall we? It's Monday morning, you've probably just dragged yourself out of bed, coffee in hand, wondering what fresh hell the news cycle has prepared for you. And there's Nick Ferrari, the 66-year-old LBC presenter who's basically become the voice of frustrated Britain, absolutely tearing into the Labour government with the kind of passion usually reserved for arguing about whether the milk goes in before or after the tea. Ferrari kicks things off with what can only be described as exasperated disbelief. Picture this, the world is genuinely experiencing some unprecedented chaos. Donald Trump, yes, that Donald Trump, now back as US president, has essentially seized Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro. Not asked nicely, not sent a strongly worded letter, seized, like something out of a Hollywood action thriller, except it's real life and infinitely more terrifying. Meanwhile, over in Iran, hundreds of people are being killed in protests. Hundreds. Real human beings fighting for their rights, losing their lives in the process. And that's not even everything. Ferrari mentions Russia allegedly sending what he calls shadow ships dangerously close to British waters. You know, just casual Cold War vibes making a comeback, nothing to see here. The geopolitical landscape is basically a powder keg with a very short fuse, and everyone's nervously eyeing who's holding the matches. So, naturally, with all this going on, with the world quite literally demanding strong leadership and decisive action, what does the Labour government do? They send out Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander to talk about potholes. I genuinely cannot make this up. It's like your house is on fire and you're worried about whether the doorbell still works. Ferrari, barely containing his frustration, asks the question we're all thinking. Only this government would decide to send the Transport Secretary out to talk about potholes. Seriously? And honestly, the seriously does all the heavy lifting there. You can practically hear the despair in his voice. It's the vocal equivalent of putting your head in your hands and just accepting that this is the timeline we're living in. But Ferrari doesn't stop there. Oh no, he's just getting warmed up. He drops an absolute bomb by saying that neither Keir Starmer nor Yvettecooper are the man or woman for the job. That's not a gentle critique, folks. That's not perhaps they could do better or room for improvement. That's a full-throated declaration that Labour's leadership is fundamentally out of their depth. His conclusion? They've just not got it. 4 words that basically sum up what a growing number of people seem to be thinking. Now, let's talk about this pothole situation for a second, because it gets even more ridiculous. The government released a map, an actual map showing how well pothole funding is being used across the country. They've introduced a traffic light rating system, published on Sunday, January 11th, that essentially grades councils on their road repair performance. Green for good, amber for adequate, red for your roads are basically the surface of the moon. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander released a statement that's so perfectly bureaucratic it almost hurts. She says, "We've put our mouth where our money is, increasing the funding for local highway authorities with £7.3 billion to fix roads." £7.3 billion is not pocket change, that's serious money. But here's the thing, when you're announcing this while the international order is potentially crumbling, it feels a bit like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, doesn't it?
Alexander continues, now it's over to them to spend the money wisely, and for the first time we are making sure the public can see how well councils are doing in delivering the improvements they want to see in their local area. Right, because transparency on pothole repairs was definitely what was keeping the British public up at night. Not inflation, not international security, not the NHS crisis. Potholes. That was the missing piece. The reaction to Ferrari's rant was immediate and divided, as these things always are in our beautifully polarized political landscape. Good Morning Britain correspondent Narinder Kaur pointed out the irony, noting that Ferrari wasn't frustrated when Starmer hadn't condemned the illegality of Trump kidnapping Maduro. It's a fair point, actually. Where's the outrage hierarchy here? When do we speak up about international law versus domestic infrastructure? Meanwhile, other listeners were fully on board with Ferrari's frustration. One viewer admitted they only listened to LBC specifically for Nick Ferrari, which is quite the endorsement in a media landscape drowning in options. Another comment that really captured the national mood simply said, "They just don't have a clue, but we're powerless to do anything about it." And doesn't that just sum up the British political experience right now? We're all just passengers on this increasingly chaotic ride, shouting suggestions from the back seat, while the driver insists they definitely know where they're going. Here's the really uncomfortable truth that Ferrari is essentially highlighting. Optics matter in politics. Leadership isn't just about what you do, it's about what you're seen to prioritize. When the world's watching unprecedented geopolitical events unfold, when Trump's making moves that could reshape international relations, when authoritarian crackdowns are happening in real time, when maritime sovereignty is potentially being challenged, your communication strategy cannot be, "Let's talk about road maintenance." It's not that potholes don't matter, they do. Anyone who's driven on British roads knows they're absolutely shocking in places. £7.3 billion for repairs is genuinely significant investment, but timing is everything in politics, and this timing was spectacularly awful. It's like announcing a new sandwich menu while the building's being evacuated. Technically useful information, catastrophically inappropriate moment. What Ferrari's really saying, and what's resonating with so many viewers, is that this government appears to lack situational awareness. They're not reading the room being, the entire planet currently experiencing multiple simultaneous crises. Strong leadership requires the ability to prioritize, to understand what matters most in any given moment, and to project competence and control when everything feels uncertain. The phrase "just not got it" might sound simple, but it's actually devastating political commentary. It suggests an absence of that indefinable quality that separates adequate politicians from real leaders, the instinct, the judgment, the natural understanding of what the moment requires. You either have it or you don't, and Ferrari's arguing that Starmer and his cabinet don't. Whether you agree with Ferrari or not, his frustration reflects something genuine happening across the country. There's a disconnect between what the government thinks people want to hear about and what people actually need from their leaders right now. In an era of genuine global instability, people want reassurance, strength, and the confidence that someone's actually in control. What they got was a traffic light system for potholes. So there you have it, the moment Nick Ferrari absolutely humiliated Keir Starmer on live radio, not through personal attacks or cheap shots, but through highlighting what might be the most damaging political quality of all, being completely out of touch. If you enjoyed this breakdown of British political chaos, subscribe to Brit Articles for more analysis, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments whether you think Ferrari was right to call out the government's priorities or if everyone's overreacting to a simple transport announcement. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.